Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beavermosh, and today it's my monthly end of the month segment where I look past at the releases that came out that I really dug but didn't get a chance to get a full video out. As I say every month, I'm a one-person operation. I just simply can only put out so many videos. Stuff that are on this list doesn't necessarily mean that they were less than. In fact, some of my favorites from the year might end up on one of these videos. This list will be kind of long because I am including those releases that came out on June 30th in this July video, because June 30th was just too soon between that release and getting the last video out that I just had to push it back. So we're just going to go through this rapid fire without any more delay. Let's get on with it. We had Serpent of Old Ensemble Under the Dark Sun, blackened death metal out of Turkey. And then we had Spectral Intercession from Coffin Mulch, just this grisly death metal coming out of Scotland. Inevitable by None, this depressive black metal out of Portland, Oregon. We had Grotesqueries with vile, crematory, gruesome death metal out of Boston. Ofnus, Time Held Me Gray and Dying. This is some melodic, atmospheric black metal with some interesting classical symphonic touches out of Wales. We had Born to Rot in Hell by Razgate, just some thrash metal out of Italy. Static Abyss, Aborted from Reality. This is some death doom out of Oakland that features members of Autopsy. And then we had Gewalt from Eiter. This is some blackened grindcore out of Germany. We had this self-titled release from Nemesis. This is Norwegian black metal, like you want Norwegian black metal. We had Hallowed Violence from All Consumed, some old school leaning death metal coming out of the UK. The second release from Vengeful Specter. This is some folk tinged, really chaotic black metal out of China. And then we had this self-titled release from the Mexico-based Criptas, blending death metal and crust punk in a really fun way. Greedy, gory gluttony from Putridity, and as the name suggests, this is some putrid, brutal death metal out of Italy. We had Carnal from Gutslit. This is some more brutal death metal, maybe more on the technical side, coming out of India. The sophomore release from Blackbraid. This indigenous, atmospheric black metal act from upstate New York that is really blowing up. Monuments to Absence from Fen. This is some post-rock infused black metal coming out of London. Survival of the Fittest from Thelemite. Some very priest leaning, as you can tell by the cover, leaning heavy metal out of Greece. We had Swada from Chepang. This is just some fucking gnarly grindcore out of Nepal. Adis Ascensus from Servant. This is just some sinister, blasphemous black metal hailing out of Germany. Post-Necrotic Human from Demolizer. This is some old school calling thrash metal coming out of Copenhagen. Any at Altar av Forak, very somber Norwegian black metal. And then we had LanzerRath, Metagalactic Domination. This is some raw, spiky black metal coming out of Michigan. Bosor Agazin from Odz Manouk. I reviewed the other Odz Manouk album that came out on the same day, and this one is also excellent. Just some very cinematic black metal coming out of California. We had Dawn of Eternal Suffering from Nuclear Remain. Just some rotting, brutal death metal coming out of Phoenix. Eleine, We Shall Remain. Dark, heavy, symphonic metal out of Sweden. And then we had Desekryptor, Vortex, Oblivion, just some pulverizing Indiana-based death metal. Guns for Hire from Tailgunner, just this very slick, fun, heavy metal record out of the UK. And then we had Burial Rite from the Massachusetts-based Exsanguination. death metal that feels quite inspired by that early Swedish scene. Ascendency, a manifest of imperious destiny. This is just some savage blackened death metal, an EP out of Copenhagen. And it's definitely a Meisako Unoho Records release if you are at all familiar with that label. Then we had Irreversible by Deitus. This is some London-based black metal. Fatale from the Night Eternal, some epic leaning heavy metal out of Germany. And then we had the second album from Gates of Dawn. This is some dungeon synth leaning ambient black metal coming out of Minnesota. Nara Untislates, I believe, is close to the pronunciation. I tried my best on some of these. This is just some haunting, raw, atmospheric black metal out of Spain. And then Morgoth Tales from Voivod, a great contemporary addition to the catalog of this iconic, progressive, experimental thrash metal act coming out of Quebec. Celestial Vision from Mistfall. This is just some enchanting symphonic metal coming out of Greece. And then we had Data Lyceum from the Zenith Passage. Just some mind-numbing, cerebral, technical death metal out of LA. Gateway, Galgan Dude. Just some death doom hailing out of Belgium. Prosaic from Mizmor, the latest from this highly acclaimed now blackened doom metal act hailing out of Portland. Ageless Summoning, Corrupting the Entempled Plane, this bleak kind of atmospheric leaning death metal out of the UK. Infinite Psychic Deaths from Outer Heaven, just some pounding death metal coming out of Pennsylvania. Panic Prayer from Inhuman Condition, just this irreverent EP from these Florida-based death thrashers. And then we had Desiderium from Somnuri, honestly some of the most memorable and infectious sludge metal I've heard this year coming out of Brooklyn. Grand Insurgence upon Despotic Altars from Dis Imperium. This is some nauseating blackened death metal with some heavy doses of grind as well coming out of Portland. Forgotten Myths and Legends from Ancestral Blood. This is some epic leaning symphonic black metal hailing out of North Carolina. The Particle Eclipse from Vagon. This is just a sick friggin' tech death EP out of Edmonton. And then we had Grief Tethers from Clot, combining death grind and power violence in a very interesting way coming out of Atlanta. Moribond from Eternal Rot, this international-based death doom project. Destroyer of All Dreams from Sadistic Vision, just some very to-the-point, no-frills death metal out of Pennsylvania. In Servitude of Darkness from the Australia-based Artenor. This has that very cold, reminiscent of that second-wave black metal sound. We had Panzerchrist, Last of a Kind, just some absolutely vile blackened death metal coming out of Denmark. Sadistic Invaders from Atonement, just some sinister blackened thrash metal out of Sweden. And then we had Astralborn, Across the Eons, honestly some of the most haunting and energetic mellow death I've heard this year coming out of Ohio. Echoes of Journeys Past from the Norwegian Flight, just some very infectious, rousing heavy metal / hard rock. We had Weltwind from Porta Nigra, some avant-garde leaning black metal out of Germany. Formlos Sterner from the Denmark-based Tongue, this wicked death black doom project with an experimental edge. Definitely an Eye Voidhanger release. And then another Eye Voidhanger release was Flesh Vessel. Yearning Promethean Rite, sealed out of Chicago. Some sprawling kind of theatrical, experimental, lot of adjectives, death metal, which is really cool to listen to. We had the latest collection of demos from the Montana-based raw vampiric black metal project Lust Hag. Then we had the Sun's Journey Through the Night Worldless, just some chaotic atmospheric black metal out of the UK. Abaddon, Statues of Sorrow, some blackened thrash metal coming out of South Africa. Knight of the Grail from Spellsword, some medieval hinting melodic black metal out of Portugal. Order from Decoherence. This is some intense, noisy, experimental black metal coming out of the UK. And then we had A Soul Purge from the Houston-based Urbane. This is some cold, atmospheric black metal with some post-punk sensibilities, at least in the aesthetics, in my opinion. Endless Torment from Dead Heat, just this ripping crossover thrash metal EP out of California. Out of Portland, Maine, The Night Eternal from Algol, just some raging black metal. And lastly, we have Girl School, WT45 question mark, and then I'm going to give a question mark to it because I don't know if that's how I'm supposed to say it. Just these new wave of British heavy metal icons prove that they still have it with these very fun, infectious, hard rock / heavy metal anthems. And hey, that concludes my list. If you enjoyed this video, enjoy what I do, hit the like button. It'd mean the world to me if you'd consider subscribing. Leave a comment. I'm very interested, especially in these videos, to hear if I introduced you to anything, if there was anything here that you missed or just knew, or that maybe I just sprouted a new interest in. I really want to see that in the comments. I have a Twitter you can follow. Link to that is in the bio of this YouTube channel. And guess what? I have a Patreon now that you can subscribe to, and I will start putting out monthly exclusive content there that's maybe different from what I typically do on the main channel. Maybe some reactions to metal news, some discography reviews, classic album reviews, maybe reviews of bigger albums. I have a lot of ideas, and I would love your support to keep this channel more sustainable. And that's all I got. My name is Maddie, aka Beaver Mosh, and I'm signing off.